remember I went to a party in Idaho. It was like a house party. And then everybody's like whispering when I'm in there. Yo, what's up, man? How you doing? I'm like, oh, what's good, man? It's like, yeah. Like, this is, you just chilling, right? I'm like, yeah, what's up? Like, okay, we was worried some of this will be in the paper. I'm not worried about nothing y'all do. I later found out that there was like a football group chat that they was like texting in when I walked in, like, oh, damn, the media's here. So, like, I am not a snitch. I'm not worried about y'all. As long as y'all don't get a DUI or something, which either way, I won't figure that out till later, then by then the whole world will know. It won't be just me. But I'm not about to just tweet that, yo, the left tackle's in here lit doing a keg stand. You know, I had to explain that. Thankfully, the DB who cut my hair, he was good people. He was in there too. He was like, no, Mike's chill. He one of us. Like stuff like that. It just didn't, you can't really fit. Because even if you kind of are one of the players in their kind of space, same age, range, some of them, like, you're just not. And you're in this weird space. And I was like, I couldn't wait to get out of there.
Welcome to the Raw Facts Podcast. I'm your host and producer, Ben Arthur, joined by my boy, Michael-Shawn Dugar. He is the Seattle Seahawks beat reporter for The Athletic. He's also the co-host of the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, which is available on all podcast platforms. He's an award-winning journalist, too. He won the Best Young Reporter Award from the National Sports Media Association back in 2021. For me personally, he's kind of helped me a lot in terms of kind of getting started in terms of covering the NFL. Many of you listening will know I'm from Seattle, covered the Seahawks a few years ago, and Mike was like definitely a big help. Like he was someone I looked up to in that regard. But got my boy on. Mike, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, my guy. Happy to be on the pod. You know, get raw with you. Happy
yes,
for
sir.
you. Killing it.
Raw
I'm
facts.
on the same. It might be the first time I've ever been on the same podcast that Schefter was once on. So I'm coming up in the world in that regard.
For sure, now, but you deserve it. Like you up and coming. So have to get into the nitty gritty of your story. So let's talk about Seattle. Obviously, like that's your home city. That's where you're from. It's where you work now. But you're specifically from South Seattle, and so being from South Seattle, like what do people maybe need to know about your upbringing to understand like who you are as an NFL reporter today?
I think that one thing is really interesting about where I came from and the job that I have specifically is I came up where it was like the idea of having a job where people tell you information and it's your job to go tell other people is kind of interesting. I'd be thinking about that sometimes because as you've been in the NFL locker room, it's like you hear stuff you're not supposed to hear. People tell you, like, all right, but keep that low real fast. You know what I mean? Or like, don't tell nobody at all. Or you can only tell this type of people. Or like, it's like journalists aren't snitches, but we like the next step from like that in some regards, like it's our job to basically get information that people don't want out a lot of the time, in terms of reporting, and then put that information out to the world or to whoever else. It feels kind of weird sometimes because like that's not natural. I've explained that to some players, like, man, like they won't get mad at it, but they'll be talking to me casually, whether we run into each other somewhere outside the facility or even just at their locker room, like, yo, you're not reporting this, right? And I have to remind them, like, oh, you know where I'm from? I'm not about to just be out here running telling your business. I just don't get down. That's not where when I came up in middle school or high school, whatever there was consequences to being like, yo, Mike running around here talking about such and such, that never really been like gossipy, chatty, kind of talk about what I'm hearing type of thing. Whereas now that's like my whole job is like, yo, Mike, what have you heard about this? What's going on in the locker room? What's going on behind the scenes? And it's just like, man, that's a weird space to kind of be in from where, like, kind of how I kind of came up. I'm all totally separate note and talk about where I came up. Seattle's not a very black city. I don't know what the number is. As you know, it's a single digit number, I'm sure. Like last I checked, it was like 5-6 years ago, it was probably like 7%.
Yeah,
7% just like
Seattle. About right.
Yeah, so it's I doubt it's gone up with how expensive it is to live here. So it's probably gone down since the last time I checked. But like if there is a black part, I'm in it. And like that's really all I've known, like socially. So that's kind of informs how I came up. Like my middle school, for example, where I went, it was a K through 8. So I went there from third grade to eighth grade. It was called African American Academy, and we had to wear uniforms. We wore like, I think I graduated wearing a kente cloth. We taught us to speak Swahili, not like full on like, but we we would learn words every once in a while. It was like emoja or kuji chakalia, like just Swahili words, obviously. Like that's where I'm coming from, even though I'm in like a really white city, black ass upbringing in that regard of like, oh yeah, you grew up at a place where African is in the name of the school. Word, like you usually you don't really
Yeah.
get that. The school is now closed, of course, but yeah, for good reasons. But it should I hopefully get that back going when I get enough bread. But yeah, that's another part that's been kind of interesting to navigate because as soon as I got out of Seattle and went to Wazoo, everybody white. So it's like, wait a minute, hold on, where all y'all come from? Oh, y'all from over there too? West side of the state? Huh? Had no idea there's so many of y'all. So that just changes everything about how you then navigate all these professional spaces. Because then, unless you go into athletics, chances are everybody in your professional space in this region of the country will be white, generally speaking, because that's just kind of what it is up in the Pacific Northwest. And that's a totally different thing to navigate. And on top of that, how do I put this? I look really black. Now, obviously, looking black is kind of like a monolith for the most part, but like you've seen me, like I'm not like suited and booted, clean cut black. Like I'm coming in there, dreadlocks, tattoos, headphones on, slapping something. Like it's
Yeah.
very, very black. It's kind of almost like how Method Man and Redman pulled up to Harvard and How High. It's like, oh, okay, like they were a different black than Dean, whatever he was, Dean King, whatever he was called in the movie, like the uppity dude. Like there's a difference. That's a whole navigating. That's a whole different, bag too, from how you dress to then like how old you are to be a younger black person in these spaces of not just higher education, but then you're in journalism, which is like an intellectual position, at least in
Yeah.
theory. Like when you're a journalist, people assume automatically that you can read and write really well. And a lot of jobs like that where someone's like, "Yo, damn, you can read, okay, hey, wait a minute, that's what's up." There's some, and not a lot of black people in those spaces. So, and it's interesting to come from a white city, but have grown up so much almost siloed to the black part. And I get out of here, and I'm like, what? Damn, where all y'all come from? And then learn how to navigate that in a time where, like, there's probably been other times of history where that's more relevant. But then we're coming up in the, like, for instance, in 2016 they put a Trump wall right in the middle of Wazoo's campus. When I was there, I'm walking through and there's a Trump wall and a full-on rally and everything. And the Mexican Student Association or Hispanic, however you say that, they over there beefing with the college Republicans branch that we got on the campus. This is like full-on looking like 1968 in the middle of campus. And then this is pre George Floyd, and this is like kind of pre Kaepernick, I think, or at least right around that time. So this is a time where there's a hyper focus now on people being like black in these white spaces, and then on top of that being black and white spaces, and then throw being in the media on top of that because of Trump. Trump has like creates this like his whole fake news. It creates this like
Yeah.
adversarial mindset with like the masses and the media. It's a lot. That's a whole lot. I just said a ton of shit, but I think about some of that coming up when I talk to guys on the Seahawks who aren't from here, and all the people that they meet, usually from like equipment staff, fans, sponsors. It's usually white people from east sides of the city or whatever, north side. And then I'll be like, dog, that Safeway you just did like a signing at? I'm from over there. You see how that was different from where your kids are at now in Bellevue?
Yeah.
Totally different part, sides of the tracks, for lack of a better term. And so I try to like highlight that, when it comes up naturally in convos, because it informs, who I am as not only as a dude, but then as a journalist too.
So Mike, how have you learned to maybe kind of navigate that in terms of like staying true to yourself, right? Because sometimes I feel like in different spaces, people can try to act a different way just to maybe assimilate in the environment they're in. But I feel like, just from my vantage point, like I feel like you're able to like always be your true authentic self, regardless of what maybe the quote unquote norms are of the industry. So how, knowing kind of your background and the environment you grew up in, and then maybe the culture shock of kind of being around so many white people, and knowing the job that we do, how have you managed to kind of keep your authentic self, and maybe always stay rooted in that?
Yeah, it's been really important for me to learn how to do that. The main way to do that, I think, it's weird, but it starts with how I dress. Like, I remember talking with a master who used to cover the Washington team for the Post, and he's got a show on Amazon now. He used to be a Bleacher Report because he was. It sounds like I didn't know him until like I didn't meet him until 2017, but it sounded like he was kind of going through a similar journey where like we just, for whatever reason, I mean, I know my reasons. It's because I went to a uniform school for so long. Like, I just can't get down with like the formal attire in sports. Like, if I go to a job interview, I'll wear a shirt and tie. A funeral, wedding. Like, I understand. I'm grown, but like, man, go show them to practice, collar shirt, khakis to watch dudes who are in shorts and t-shirts running around, and then we go to the locker room and they naked, and I'm in a suit. I'm just like, bro, this is not. This is weird, and it starts from there for me because when I can dress like me, I feel more like me. So yeah, I can show up to practice. I showed up to practice the other day. I had like a hoodie on, some slippers, some sweats, and it sounds so simple, but like, go look at how everybody else is rocking, and you'll just see how you stand out. But that like being that dressing like how I dress, more casual. I'm the king of wearing hoodies to the lock in the press box on game day. There's not no knock on anybody who's suited and booted. That's great, but I feel like everybody should just be them. If you are a suit guy, you want whatever, or semi-formal business casual, be that. For me, it's more casual guy. I'm crew neck, hoodie, wearing some type of black owned clothing, whether it's jackets or whatever. I feel like that's how it starts. Because if I dress like me, I feel like me. I don't feel like me when I'm in like a suit in a non-suit situation. Like I said, funeral, wedding, yeah, that's different. Because there,
Yeah.
it feels like I'm like still being me in that situation. But like at work, it just feel weird. And I think that's where it starts. The other part is I just see so much value in the way I do my job, just being authentically me. It helps with the coach, like building connections with the coaching staff. Like, yeah, I lose out on some, like if there's a 55-year-old white guy who's the GM, yeah, I'm probably not going to bond with him much. That's just not how it's going to work. But maybe me and the 33-year-old black DB coach might get along, more naturally, or me and the running back room or the DB room. All the DBs are black in every room pretty much. So there, I naturally bond with some of those guys, like just being me. I listen to the same music as the players. They richer than me, so we're not totally dressing the same, but we generally are dressing the same.
Yeah.
Our Instagram feeds all generally look the same. So I think that part, starting with just being me, how I dress to the music I listen to, I don't switch none of that up. I don't really switch up my lingo. Like all of that stuff just stays the same. And because it then helps me professionally with like building relationships, I keep all that the same.
So Mike, why journalism? Why did you want to get into sports storytelling?
It's a good question. Well, I can't dunk and I've never scored a touchdown. So the only way to be around the game in that regard was well, there were a couple ways in college. I was like, well, I could try and coach. Well, I was like, I don't know the game that well. And the other path was to talk about it. So that's actually why I went to Wazoo. I was like, yeah, I could just be like Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless. And this is in like 2009-ish, 2010. So yeah, I think about how hot those two were in particular around this time. They're everywhere. Even inside the NBA was like super popping at that time. I know it is now, but Like at that time, it was like, yo, you could be like Chuck, you can be like, who else was on back? Yeah, still had Kenny, obviously. I was like, yo, okay, cool. I'll just be in broadcasting. That way I can just like get on around the horn and do
Mhm.
that thing. My advisor in high school advisor was like, oh, well, instead of the University of Washington, if you want to be on TV for broadcast journalism, you should probably go to Wazoo. They got a good program there. And she was right about that. We turn out a lot of broadcast people in the Murrow College, usually in news, less sports, but we got them too.
Mhm.
But so that's why I went to Wazoo. It was like, yo, you should go there and do that. I was like, all right, bet. And then I got there, and then I was like, this broadcast part is not for me. And it was for such a dumb reason that I think about it. I was under the impression from talking to people that I'd have to probably cut my hair and get more of that clean cut look to be on TV. And while that's probably not formally true, you still also don't see a lot of people, dreaded up, on TV doing their sports thing. It's usually a more clean cut look. So there's that. The other thing was the cameras was huge that we had to lug around for college for class. I was like, I'm not about to be carrying this joint. Like they was, and they're still big. I be asking the TV people now. I see them at the Seahawks facility. I be like, yo, I can record an entire movie on my iPhone, but y'all have to carry around like a full wagon of equipment to every game just to get your feet off. And they're like, yeah. And they break it down to me. So yeah, in college, I was just like, no, I'm not about to be carrying all this. The editing took too long. Uh, and then I remember talking to Lamar Hurd. I think he does Blazers games now, but at the time he was at the Pac-12 Network, black dude. And I was like, yo, so like, is it possible to do broadcasts if you weren't a player? Like give your opinion. I know you can do the play-by-play stuff. I figured that out because I tried that with the local radio station. I was like, oh, this is fun. I was like, could I ever be the color guy? If I didn't play, he was like, can. It's very tough. And then we sat there and spitballed like options of people who've done it. I mean, now it's still pretty rare. If you look at the standard for a broadcast pairing, it's usually like broadcaster with like a Mark Jones or Mike Breen or whatever,
Mhm.
and then former athlete or former coach, which it tends to be there's some overlap. You get like a Doc Rivers, who's former coach and former player. Like the people like Doris Burke are rare. Like it's very rare. I can't even really think of that many off the top of my head like Doris who didn't play. Obviously, she didn't play in the NBA because she can't. But it's like how many people are like Doris? So I figured out how rare that was, and I was like, damn, okay, how do I figure that out without playing? I can't just join the team right now and be a former athlete. So, and I think Lamar played at Oregon State, which is why that worked for him. Maybe ASU, I can't remember. But um, so I remember one day I was in my English class trying to get my grade raised, and my teacher we were talking about like the Saints about to play the Niners in the playoff game. We ended up talking for like an hour or so. He was like, "Man, you really know a lot about sports. You should have a column in the paper." And I was the first person to be like, "Hey, maybe I could do a journalism thing that's like writing." I did
Mhm.
write for the student paper in high school. Now, granted, I only did that because they told me I couldn't take drama anymore. I took drama like 3 times, like our acting class, because there was no homework.
Yeah.
Like in high school, I'm like, if there's no homework, sign me up for that class. That's why I took cooking. Same thing. I didn't really, I wanted to learn how to cook, but I was like, well, all the work is in class. Then I just leave. And then that's it. Don't got to think about it. No studying. There's no studying for drama. It was great. So, what they told me is like, Mike, you can't just keep taking drama and graduate. You have to take another elective. So I was like, all right, give me the newspaper class. I'll do that. Newspaper in yearbook. So I was like, all
Mhm.
right, cool, I can do that. Got to college, both said that in the English room. I was like, let me try that. And then I remember my first assignment was swimming. And this was crazy because I can't even swim. I had to go cover Wazoo swimming. Remember, I sat there, I researched swimming, all the strokes that you have to do, um, all the rules and everything, how it all works. I interviewed the coach. His name was like Tim Yeager or something like that. Um, and I remember how cool it was that my parents they listened to the interview on like WSUCougars.com or something like that. And you can only really see Tim because it's like the post, they post the post game interview with the coach. So you can really only hear me. You can't see me. But my parents thought that was the coolest shit in the world. And I was like, you know what? Cool. Broadcast it is. Hopefully no more swimming. Hopefully I get to do basketball or football. I was like, man, that'll work. So I really wanted to be around the game, be like Stephen A,
Mhm.
which I guess is still kind of the goal because he's rich. But that's how it
Yeah.
started, and
Yes.
then that's how I got into print. It's like, oh man, I just need to be able to look like me. Kind of go back to what I was saying about how I stay me. I want to look like me. I don't want to have to conform. Not like I sound like I'm scared to wear a suit. I'm not. But like the look good, feel good thing matters to me. If I don't like how I'm feeling, if my pants is too tight or my shoes hurt, it's just not, not me. I want to show up like me. Like I'm about to get married in June. And if she'll rock with us wearing like designer sweatsuits or something like that, that would be like my dream. She won't, but that'd be my dream,
Yeah.
So let me show up in just the dopest custom black owned sweatsuit joint with a logo or something like that. It'd be so fire. So yeah, I got into it just to be around the game as someone who can't dunk. And I ended up getting in print because I was like, I need to be able to look like me, and I ain't trying to carry around no heavy ass cameras.
You were though like an athlete in what, middle school? Didn't you go to like the Junior Olympics for track or
Oh yeah. I
yeah?
ran
So,
track
so,
as a
so it
kid.
wasn't like you were like just some scrub and you were like, oh, I want to stay connected to the game. Like you actually had somewhat of an athletic background, even though you didn't do it like in high school and beyond.
Yeah. I played ball at Franklin for like Franklin High School.
Mhm.
Who's some alumni that your listeners would know? Jason Terry went to my high school.
Mhm.
Aaron Brooks went to my high school. I'm a year younger than Peyton Siva, who played on that championship Louisville team from 2013. He was in drama with me. Out to Siva.
Okay.
Uh, so there's a few alums. I think Corey Dillon's a Franklin guy. Go to the NFL side. Yeah, there's so my high school churns them out. Like the year I got cut, we won state in basketball. We were used to be a powerhouse back then. But yeah, I ran track growing up, did some junior Olympics stuff. I used to run against my man who played for the Sounders. I think he's on the Olympic team or the US team.
Oh,
DeAndre
DeAndre
Yedlin.
Yedlin.
Yeah,
Didn't he
yeah,
go to
yeah, yeah.
O'Day?
Yeah, he went to O'Day High School
Yeah.
in Seattle. And I think DeAndre is like a badass soccer player too.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I used to be faster than that dude. Like I
Okay.
remember, I raced him before back in the day. He used to run independent. He didn't have a team. I think his dad was like his trainer at that time. But like I remember him, we used to race him a lot. And it wasn't until I got older, like 5, 6 years ago, I was like, oh wow, that DeAndre kid ended up being something. Good for him. I looked up on like a Sounders, maybe when they won the MLS Cup or something. I remember seeing him or hearing his name, like that same DeAndre, huh? Like how many brothers named DeAndre Yedlin? It's like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
him. I'm like, good. I don't know him or anything, but like, yeah. So I have some background, but when I got to high school, all that track stuff was out the window. I was like, we have to practice running to run. Nah, I'm not using my after school hours for that because track's a spring sport too. So the weather's nice. You getting out at 2:30, 2:45. I'm trying to go get on the girls or something. I'm not really trying to get out there and run. And I was like, yeah, once I got older, my two goals in high school were to get a car so I could drive around and go get girls. That was everything. That's why I was cool stopping sports. I was like, yo, all the dudes getting all the chicks is either tall or got cars or both. So I ain't about to hit no growth spurt. So let me go get a car so I can get this thing moving. Because Carr
Yeah.
was like, yo, he was the man. So yeah, I'm not just like totally a scrub, yeah, but if I was to get on TV, I'd be like that time Jalen Rose called out Skip and was like, ain't you average 1.4? Like, yeah, an athlete could get me with that. Like, yeah, man, I'm not.
Yeah.
I was never on their level to be, uh, to be talking at the same level they do. So yeah, I do got a little background.
Yeah, for sure. And I do have to say, like, Mike is a hell of a flag football player. Like when he's playing free safety in the back end, cover three or whatever, he's a ball hawk. And then I will say he is pretty fast. I did race him once. I pulled my hammy, but he is pretty fast. Like he can like a 4.9. You can run like a 4.9 flat, which is like no journalist is even getting within like close of that realm. So you
Yeah, I,
yeah.
I do take pride in that. Me and one of the PR staffers, a good homie of mine named Chris. When the Seahawks had a media combine, we both ran 4.85, and it's on tape with the
Yeah.
electronic timer and everything. 4.85, I'll take that, man. Like you said, ain't too many journalists running 4.85. Shoot, ain't some guys in the league not running that. Now usually they're like linemen, but
Yeah.
still, man, that's it.
No,
Yeah, so
no,
I
it's
can move a
impressive.
little bit.
Yeah, and I remember some Seahawk players were like kind of like giving you props or they're having fun with it or something
A
when
little
there
bit
was
of both.
times.
Quandre was
Yeah.
hating. Cliff Averill was like, bro, why you take your shirt off to run the 40? And it's like, bro, to run faster, Cliff. Duh. What do you mean? It's like I needed every little
Every
because you know
point oh second.
I'm
Yeah, point oh
heavier
one.
with the dreads, so it's like I need to counteract that. Yeah, man, I need to get out there. You know, I spent a lot of money on all my chest tattoos. Let me show these off one time
Facts.
and run. Yeah, so like I can play a little bit. Shoot, playing flag is how reason I know ball the way I do now. Like I ain't never
Yeah,
played football before, but playing flag out there it teaches you the game a little bit.
facts. And so Mike, your first full time job in the industry was at the Moscow Pullman Daily News, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was that experience like, right? Like as we've talked about, you know, you're from South Seattle, you're from this environment, growing up around Black people and people of color, and then you go to Wazoo, obviously, which is a a big PWI school, Pac-12 school, but then you're at this tiny newspaper, uh, and what I don't know where exactly you were living, either what in Idaho or on the Washington side, but it's a kind of small community, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what was maybe that experience like for you?
That sucked. But I was living in Pullman,
Okay.
so the Pullman, Washington, where Washington State is, and the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho, is like 8 miles apart, 10. So you're not you can just live in Washington and drive over to Idaho, which is what I did. Yeah, that was awful because if Pullman's super white, you drive over to Idaho and it don't really get much white. And this it wasn't like this Klan rallies every other day or something like that. Like it was more like subtle stuff that was really just you just don't feel like you fit in. You know, you get especially because I'm in a when you're around like in northern Idaho and you're around all these people who it's not like they're totally in their own world, like to the point where they never seen a black person. It ain't like that, but man, it's whatever the next tier down from that is. Like I'm coming in here with an image with imagery that they really only see from athletes or like in music videos they tell their kids not to watch type thing.
Mhm.
And it's just you feel like you stand out, not always in a bad way. Like some I broke the ice with a lot of people that I was still my friends, from standing out. They're like, "Yo, how did you get into this?" Like it makes sense. Well, we all look like us. Where you come from? And it's like, okay, now we cool.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was not a good experience. I met some a lot of people in Idaho that I still rock with, but had some really bad like microaggression stuff, and just never really feel like I fit. Whether it was going out to the bars with the homies or going to eat somewhere, just walking in and be like, "Yo, why does it look like everybody's staring at me, dog? Like it's because I'm not wearing Wranglers and these cowboy boots or whatever, like beat up Nikes or something like that. Like rest of y'all, like let me rock." Um, I can see it's very similar when you talk to athletes who went to white schools, which is damn near most of them. Like a lot of them feel the same way, particularly if they went to a school in the sticks, like some of these places in the South, or talk to black people who went to like BYU or something or Utah. As it can feel, I've talked to some guys like that. It feels very, very similar. Where it's
Mhm.
not even like people are out here calling you the N word every other day, but you just feel like you don't fit anywhere. Where it's at a bar, at a party, at the grocery store, it's just like at the mall, just like, yo, this place is not for me. It don't feel like me. Um, yeah, I felt like that quite a bit. And that's just socially. Then you get to the work part and it was covering small town high school football, stuff like that, going in these small towns. I'm covering towns of football where they don't even play 11-man football. They play 8. I was
Mhm.
covering 8-man football. And it was awful. Small towns where the graduating class would be 7 kids. In towns like Deary and Kendrick, Idaho, stuff that I'm naming that nobody's ever heard of. Trying to even think if there's a point of reference. I think Leighton Vander Esch from the Cowboys, first round pick, he went to a school called Salmon River that was like just outside of my coverage area back then, and they played 8-man football. Like when he got drafted, I was like, holy shit, how did he make the NFL from playing at that small? The town he's from is so small. I don't even know if they have like a police station, a gas station. Like it's one of them type of towns where there's no
Mhm.
stoplights. You just roll right through it, and that's where the time changes. In Idaho, trying to go from north to south. So yeah, that was a not great experience because again, I'm growing up around people who look like me. My school was like probably like half Asian, half black. So I don't even know if I went to school with that many white people growing up until I got to college. Um, and it's not that it's super like again, it's not all bad. Like every day, people are like calling you a monkey. It ain't the 50s, but you just don't feel like you belong there, and it could feel weird. All my because then I look like and hang out with, and then in the same like pool socially as like the athletes, but it's not like I'm gonna just be hanging out with a bunch of the whole D line room from the University of Idaho football team. No, that'd be weird. I cover these dudes, it'd be kind of
Yeah.
weird. I used to get my hair cut by one of the DBs, but that was like about it. Shout out to the homie Jay Sean. Other than that, you don't feel like you belong. And even then, when you're in the same social setting as them, you're still not one of them. I remember I went to a party in Idaho, it's like a house party, and then everybody's like whispering when I'm in there. I'm in there with my girl, her home girl, and like one of my other friends was white. And we in there, and then like you could see them kind of whispering and being weird. And then one of them, I think one of the linemen, offensive linemen, big difference from the D line, comes over and he's like, yo, what's up, man? How you doing? I'm like, oh, what's good, man? He's like, yeah, like this is you just chilling, right? I'm like, yeah, what's up? He's like, okay, we was worried some of this will be in the paper. I'm like, bro, I'm not worried about what y'all do. And I looked, I pointed at the girl. I'm like, you see this? I'm not worried about nothing y'all do. And I guess I later found out that there was like a football group chat that they was like texting in when I walked in, like, oh damn, the media's here. And I'm just like, yeah, that's why it started with when for the first question you asked me, I'm like, bro, like I am not a snitch. I am
Yeah.
here. It was like a Friday night or two, Saturday night or something. Like, I am here to drink and party and hopefully have sex with this girl that I'm with tonight. I'm not worried about y'all. As long as y'all don't get a DUI or something, which either way, I won't figure that out till later, then by then the whole world will know. It won't be just me. But I'm not about to just tweet like, yo, the left tackle's in here lit doing a keg stand. I had to explain that. Thankfully, the DB who cut my hair, he was good people. He was in there too. He was like, no, Mike's chill. He's one of us. But yeah, see, you get shit like that. I hated it.
Yeah.
That was a terrible, terrible day. The party was cool. We ended up leaving, but like stuff like that, it just didn't. You can't really fit because even if you kind of are one of the players in their kind of space, same age range, some of them, like you're just not. And you're in this weird space. And I was like, I couldn't wait to get out of there.
Mm. And so kind of going off that, Mike, like just kind of the reaction of some of the guys to you even just being in that environment, even though it's like a party, it's and all that. So I'm just kind of curious, like how have you like maybe balance like trying to like develop like actual relationships with the guys you cover like today with the Seahawks versus knowing that you also have a job to do when good or bad you have to kind of report on it. It's who you are. It's what you get paid to do. Like how have you tried to maybe uh toe that line in a professional manner, but at the same time always kind of maybe being respectful of the guys you cover?
And it's really tough, and not because I don't know how to do it. I know how to do it just fine. But the really tough part is that, on a macro sense, the print journalists are really the only people left who can't be like homers slash buddy buddy with the players. You got like the national people can because that's kind of their bag. They can be anti or like super pro. Like you can be on if you're like I'm talking like national talking heads. You can be super biased if you're like Colin Cowherd or something like that, right? Same thing if you were a national person and you're like even a host. Even if you're someone like Lisa Salters or something, she want to just be biased. Every time she sees George Kittle, it's like, yo, George, what up? Like if that was her people, that would be cool. No one would be like, Lisa, chill out. You know what I'm saying? At least I don't think so. Same thing with like all the local TV people. Like local TV people damn near can tweet Go Hawks every time they have a report. Like there's just this they say we sometimes when they're reported, like it's this fandom attached to that. And then you got like fans who do podcasts now, who they can kind of break that too, because their podcast would be called like Packers fans unite or something like that. But they'll be able to get Jordan Love on there or something. They'll be able to get your former Packers or whatever. So now they're in the media too, but they fans. So now it's like we're the only people left that have to feign objectivity. And it's like, well, damn, it makes it hard to like only get so close because it's like everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is like
Yeah.
partying with the athletes and being buddy with them and having them on their podcast and shooting the shit. And so it's like, how the hell do we compete with that? How am I
Yeah.
supposed to like? I remember one player, I did a feature on him. We met at like a coffee shop for the interview, and he invited me to his birthday party. It was at some club. I didn't go. I wouldn't have gone anyway, but I because I don't like that club that he was going to. But the, I said no, largely because like I can't be partying with the guy writing about. That's kind of weird. But then like it sucks because pretty much any other person in the media can probably, unless you're a print person, you could probably go. Like the radio people are biased. The TV people will always have like a pro team lean. Like everybody's pretty, or they're like just homers in general, or like maybe just negative because they're such a super fan. You know, fandom can go both ways, but it sucks. We the only people left. That's like gotta be objective. Someone asked me today if I like get free Seahawks gear. It's like, yeah, I do sometimes, but I never wear it. Right? But we're the only people left who have that obligation. So that makes it really hard because who our competitors are. It's like if I want an exclusive interview with DK, um, I'm more obligated to ask him the tough stuff. Like if I was to get him right now, I gotta ask him about all the penalties he's been
Mhm.
getting or whatever. Versus if he does an interview with Shannon Sharp, him and Shannon can just shoot the shit. Shannon has no journalistic obligation really. Shannon might do it anyway because he wants to, but if DK and Shannon just talk chop for an hour, it would just be like, oh yeah, me and Shannon are cool, you know, like part of that Shannon being a former player. But even if I was to use a non-former player as an example of like a Ashley Moss of I Am Athlete or a Taylor Rooks, who like can kind of you kind of feel it there too. They cool, you know, they can be cool with them. I feel like everybody else but the print people are the ones left out, and that puts us in a very weird space. So I say all that to say, I'm getting real close to being like, man, damn that. Next time somebody offer me to go to their birthday party, I'm sliding, you know, because what I have learned too is two things. One, you just got to play the game. Like
Mhm.
maybe the only way to get that interview is to go with DK to this birthday party so that he knows
Mhm.
that I'm cool, so I can get the interview. My at the end of the day, my bosses ain't gonna care how I got the interview. You know, as long as I didn't pay them for it. And even then they might not care, but I wouldn't do that. But you know what I'm saying? Like if I gotta cross that, that is what it is. Otherwise, I'm gonna be obsolete. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and the other part is there's not really too many instances that come up where you have to really go hard on a guy in an unfair way. Like if they do something wrong, chances are everyone knows they did something wrong, and you can talk about it accordingly. Um, like it's usually not that. Like if they get arrested or something like that, like okay, well you can report on them getting arrested. You don't really need an opinion on it. You know, if you don't really need to kill a guy. And when they talk about whether they play bad or something, it's very easily the second thing is critique the performance, not the person.
Mhm.
That's pretty easy. Now, someone like DK's situation currently that would get tough because he's out pushing people after the play. But generally speaking, I can be really tight with player A and that not really impact anything because I'm not Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, me and Tyler are cool. He's been on my radio show, my podcast. If Tyler plays bad, I just talk about Tyler playing bad. Me and Tyler still gonna be cool because you know what? Tyler probably knows he's playing bad. You know, it's not like I'm out here saying Tyler's an asshole or lying on him or talking about his personal business or nothing. So that part has been, as I said, I know how to do it, but it sucks because it feels like everybody else can take the next step and
Mhm.
kind of really lean into like being pro the athletes and just throw all objectivity out the window. Whereas we're the last one standing to be like fair and right down the line, which is annoying.
Yeah, it's a really fair point you bring up, Mike, especially because like you said, like print people are becoming like obsolete, right? Just in terms of like the whole newspaper industry, and it's like kind of like what's the point almost, right? If we're we're staying like on these principles, but it's not working, access is getting taken away. It's like it
Mm-hmm.
gets worse and worse every year, and it's almost like what are we doing? Like we might as well just be new media, like quote unquote new
Mm-hmm.
media, because if you can be like pro the player, pro the team, like then you're going to get the access, right? Or what have you. So I think it's a really interesting space that we're in, and so um I guess just kind of where are you with that? I mean, I know you kind of said like you're almost at the like F it point. Like I'm just gonna kind of do those things when those opportunities come up to maybe go to a birthday party of a player or whatever. But like, how do we survive in kind of that landscape, do you think?
I think if it's how I've survived, or at least how I'm surviving, because it's an ongoing thing, it's just being very honest with the players and sometimes the PR staff. Um, like I've had some really big stories at the Seahawks, where they were not negative per se, but they weren't about like great topics. Like one of them was about the draft pick Malik McDowell, who they drafted and never played because he cracked his head. You know, riding ATV in the offseason. Never played for them anyway. So it was a big deal. So I did like an investigative piece on that. And then I did like a piece on Earl Thomas that was big. This is like a what happened to Earl type piece in The Athletic. I did one on Brandon Browner, who's like, last I checked, was in prison, serving like a 5-year sentence for, attempted murder of the mother of his child, right? I did all these really big stories. Russell Wilson diving into that situation. All these stories that had like, they just weren't fun. They were good stories, great journalism, how you're supposed to do it. I went to the PR staff this offseason. I'm like, I really just want to dive into something cool, something fun. Give me some access on something that like is not gonna have me looking up police records. Like at the very minimum, let's do that. Or having to quote someone anonymously, because it's dicey and the relationship is fractured. Which is how I ended up getting the interview to go to Quanton Diggs' house in Texas. And I talked with Quanton, when he approved the story. I was just like, yo, kind of talking to him about here's what's going to happen. Here's the level of trust you can have. And not like full on like, hey, man, I'm not going to report anything negative that you tell me, but just kind of letting them know like there's a level of trust that you can have in me. That's like, I'm a not protect the team, but protect you in a way that gives you the freedom to trust me and just be you around me, because he was letting me around his house, his wife, his kids, his friends, his chef, his nephews, everybody, and in theory, it's supposed to be full on like, yep, I get to just report whatever, and you don't get to see the story beforehand, and it's what it is, And I don't think I let him see it beforehand, but we're getting to this point where it's like, man, if we don't bend a little bit on some of this stuff that we taught in journalism, we're not going to get the access, because if it's too stringent, they're going to give it to somebody else. They're going to give it to, I don't want to call it any print people by name, but there's going to be other people that write the story, and it's going to be fluffy, and it's going to get them views, and it's going to get them a raise, and it's going to be great. And like, I think my Quandre story was fine because it wasn't nothing negative really to talk about with him. But my thing is just being straight up with them. Like, here's what I'm looking at. Here's what I want to do. And the other part is just being fair. Like Quandre missed a tackle. Quandre has a bad game. Bobby has a bad game. I'm thinking of people I'm like, have a decent relationship, with a DJ Dallas. Bobby, Locke. There's a bunch of guys. Like, I've been around a little bit now, but it just kind of, there's just a level of respect. And being honest with them, whether I see them out or whatever. But yeah, it's very tough. And some of it is separating myself sometimes when I do my podcast, because that's where it can get a little tricky. Because in print, I'm never going to just like be super biased or whatever, talk like a fan. But a podcast interview is not investigative in that way. Like sometimes you do just want to give a guy a space to just be him, talk about fun stuff, So the podcast, and when I've had a radio show, I've operated with that in a different space. Like we got Pete Carroll on the show in June. There's plenty of things to critique Pete about, but it's not a debate. That's been the way me and Chris have approached our podcast. If we get DK on tomorrow, probably won't, but if we do, it's not going to look like First Take. We probably just going to have fun with DK, because if we don't, he's just going to do the interview with somebody else. He's going to do McAfee. He's going to do Rich Eisen. All these places that can just be cool, and that's the name of the game now. That's where it's going. Sure. Whether people want to say it out loud or not, if you if the players fit, because there's so many outlets now for players.
And the athletes, a lot of them have their own platforms too, where they can do their own. If the player don't have his own podcast, if the player don't have his own podcast, or if there's not a former player on that team who has one, then there's probably another journalist, a national one who he rocks with. Like it's so much. Like DK is a good example. If DK don't feel safe to talk on my podcast, then he could just go do Sherms, or he can just go do KJ's, or he can go do Lofa Tatupu's, or he can go do Taylor Rooks,
or First Take or Shannon Sharp or whoever, like we can fall down the pecking order real fast if we don't feel like the space is not safe. So I've almost had to treat the podcast separate in that way to be like, yo, we're gonna have fun on here. We ain't about to grill you, nothing. And whether that's like our journalistic obligation, man, that's tough. My media ethics lady who taught me at Wazoo, she'd probably be ashamed, but it's like, yo, I ain't gonna get this interview without it because that's the landscape that we in right now.
Facts. Yeah, no, that's we have to adjust. I mean, plain and simple, if we're not gonna like kind of fall behind. And Mike, I want to dive into the Seahawks a little more, but real quick, back to Idaho. We have to talk about this incident that you had with former Idaho football coach Paul Petrino when he basically like tried to fight you. I'll let you kind of explain the story, but to give kind of the listeners some background, I guess you wrote a story that he didn't like. He thought it like painted the team in a bad light. I think it was specifically about like the team's passing game or whatever, how they weren't able to really push the ball down the field. He basically starts berating you verbally. And I guess another reporter at a practice and like one of the Idaho football staffers has to kind of restrain him. What can you maybe tell us about like how crazy that was? Because this made national news. This was 8 years ago now, but this was all over the place. So like from your vantage point, like what exactly happened?
Yeah, Paul Petrino, that Petrino family is full of some characters, man. Let me tell you. But yeah, I interviewed the quarterback. His name is Matt Linehan. I think he's the quarterback coach there now, actually. And Matt told me that the deep ball game was like a work in progress. I think the headline was something to that effect. It was like Idaho's deep passing game was a work in progress. We've had very fair quotes about it, quoting the quarterback, of all people. Think about that. Yeah, Paul didn't like it. The next day, he just started yelling at me and another reporter from he's on the field and we're on the sideline. He's yelling at us from the field. And then practice ends, and while he's walking off, he's like, yeah, you guys don't know shit. If you guys are going to keep writing negative stuff, we'll just kick you out of practice. And so I'm like, what did he say? And then Paul just, he gets by us probably like 10, 15 yards and then just pivots, turns around. He's red. He's hot. And that's when one of his GA's graduate assistants has to grab him. And then he argues a little bit more. And then he ends up going into the facility. At that point, I used to blog every practice because this was like training camp or spring ball, fall camp. That's right. College is fall camp. So I'm doing like hey, day 12 of fall camp. This is what happened. So I remember telling the SID, the sports information director, her name was Becky. He said, Becky, yo, he can't talk to me like that. Like, I'm not one of his players. I may look like one, but I ain't like, because I always thought subconsciously that was part of that too. Like, I'm standing there looking like a kid he'd recruit. I was really young. I was like 23 or something like that at the time. So, like, I could see why an old white dude think he can just scream on me like that. Paul screams on everybody, but I felt like that was a component as well. Told Becky, I said, yo, I'm about to be here a little later. It was a morning practice. I said, I got to come by later. I got to interview the soccer coach. If Paul want to talk, we can talk. He wants, we can rap. I remember I tweeted, yo, I'm about to have my practice report, but it'll be a little different. It's actually going to be behind the paywall and in the paper, something like that. And the SID, she called me. She was like, yo, just be careful what you write. Like, hey, we tape all the practices just so you know. And I'm like, oh. That's what we doing now. That sounded like a threat there. All right, this pen's about to go crazy. Watch this. Then I wrote about it, detailed what happened and why I felt like Paul had no reason to talk to me like that, and that he had to be restrained, while we was beefing. And I remember I went to the bar that night, the local bar in Idaho, I think it's called the Corner Club. I remember I went there and the graduate assistant, he was there. And I remember he came up to me. He was like, yo, hey, man, because I don't know him. He came up, he was like, hey, just to let you know, I'm the guy who had to hold Paul back today. He was wilding. Like, I'm sorry. I don't even remember his name, but he was like, yo, he basically apologized on behalf of Paul, which is important detail. Because the next morning when my story comes out, they hold a press conference at the facility to be like, Paul reads a statement. He's like, yeah, I never had to be restrained from Mr. Dugar. Got my name wrong. Basically says I'm lying. I'm like, this. I wasn't allowed to write about it anymore because I'm in the story now, so I couldn't. But I was so hot because then I was leaving, and he asked me to go into the side computer lab as I was leaving. And he was like, "Yo, man," then he actually apologized. He didn't fully apologize. It was one of those half-ass joints, but at least he acknowledged that he was wrong. And I'm just like, dog, you just lied on me on TV like 2 seconds ago. Now you, what? No respect for that cat. But yeah, they ended up blowing up. It was like, yo, the Idaho was a bad team at the time, and yeah, the coach trying to fight a reporter, and yeah, like I stand by that. That's why I include that part of the corner club. That's really important. I'm not gonna lie anyway. There's no reason for me to, because I do know they take practice. If I was lying, they'd be able to drop that and cook. My career is cooked if I do that. I wasn't lying. But also, the dude introduced himself as that, as the dude who had the whole ball back. Like, that's crazy. That they lied on me like that. And then they actually shadow banned me from practice after that. And it's funny how they did it, right? So they changed the practice rules after that. They was like, yo, y'all can only come with the last 15 minutes, and then you guys can do your interviews after. That sucks, but it is what it is. So I show up right at the 15-minute kind of threshold. I get there, and the guy from the student paper and the other guy who got yelled at with me, they're already there. I'm like, yo, when did y'all get here? And it was like, yeah, Mike, we kind of were just talking about that. It sounds like we got a different email than you because we've been here the whole practice. I said, you gotta be shitting me. So now y'all shadow banning me from practice, thinking that I'm not gonna put two and two together. I walk in, y'all already here. So I go yell at the SID. Me and her go back and forth. They don't lift the shadow ban. I forget how we ended up squashing that. Oh, that's what it was. The student paper wrote a column about it and was like, hey, if everybody doesn't get the same access, then none of us are going to go to practice. So shout out to the Daily Argonaut or whatever the school paper is called over there. They rolled with me. Yeah, man, I hate everybody over there involved in Idaho stuff. I got no problem with Becky Paul's the name of the SID. Paul Petrino's the coach. Because they treated me unfairly. Even the athletic director, his name was Rob Spear at the time. Rob was standing there when Paul had to be held back. Rob did nothing, said nothing, got up there and lied with Paul. And then I had a separate meeting with Rob about something else. And he said that he had heard that, because I used to take my own photos, on practice. So I'm a little bit closer than other journalists because I'm with my camera on one knee, taught myself how to use a camera. He's like, yeah, I heard one of the parents or somebody told him that I tried to trip the quarterback during practice while I was taking photos, like on the sideline. I'm like, Rob, are you kidding? You just accused me of trying to hurt Matt Linehan, dog? That's wild. So apparently that got spread because one of the parents brought it up to one of my colleagues later. So he was like, yeah, man, I heard at this Pullman High soccer game, one of the parents told me, like, you tried to trip Matt Linehan? I'm like, so they spreading lies about me. They lying on me on TV. They shadow banning me from practice. Fuck Idaho. Like, I didn't like nothing. Like, it's hard for me to get to a point where I just hate people. So yeah, I hate all them people involved. They earned that. They earned that hate by lying on me. Spreading rumors like these are rumors that would get me fired and get me cooked in the industry too. Like if I tried to trip the starting quarterback or even the backup. Come on, man. I remember I saw Matt Linehan at the bar too later. Told him about it. He was like, yeah, man, I heard that shit. I know. No, come on, man. I know you. You know you wouldn't do that. Me and Matt cool now. Like Idaho was really bad, man. You asked me how it was. Bad. It wasn't just, oh, I lived in a town where most people were white. No, I went through things that sucked there. That was a terrible thing. It wasn't all bad in terms of covering the other sports. Me and the women's basketball coach was cool. Me and the soccer coach, his name was Derek Pittman. He was cool. Like I had some good vibes with pretty much everybody but the SID, the AD, and the head football coach. Yeah, man. Yeah. So, and then that made things awkward because the head football coach's son went to Pullman High. I was also in charge of covering Pullman High. He was the quarterback at Pullman High. So I think his name was Mason. So it's like now he doesn't like me because he thinks I'm out to get his dad. So now all our interviews are contentious. Remember, he's the quarterback, Yeah. Paul's daughter went to Pullman High. Her name was Ava. She was like the star softball player. So now it's like these trickle-down effects of the dad being a dickhead is like affecting my job. That was terrible. It was just the kids didn't treat me that bad, but it's like they treated me how someone would if they felt like I was coming at their dad. If I felt like someone was coming at my dad, I treat them like shit too. Like I didn't even feel bad that the kids were doing that. They were led poorly by Paul. So yeah, man, everything about Idaho sucked. Not everything, sorry. I met some of my closest friends there too, but the media part, nah, man, that sucked. I'm so glad to have gotten out of Idaho and away from Rob Spear, Paul Pacino, Becky Paul, all them.
So how long were you there in Idaho?
Let's see. I started in 2014. I left in the spring of 2017, so like 2.5 years, something like that, which felt like an eternity. Way too long. That's how long I was there. Way too long is the answer.
Yeah. Okay. And so being able to like get out of there and go back home to Seattle and cover the Seahawks. So first of all, like I feel like so you started covering the Seahawks that 2017 season, correct? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of like the end of like the Legion of Boom guys, right? So like I got there 2018, and so Bobby and KJ were still there, and then Earl was there for 4 games, and then gave Pete the bird as he was getting carted off at Arizona that one game, and so those were really the only LOB and Russ, obviously, but you had Sherm, right? Cam
Mm-hmm.
Chancellor was still there, Cliff Averill, and so being a Seattle kid, right? Team you grew up watching, and you're getting to cover the end. Well, now you can look back at it and know that it was the end. But what was this iconic brand in terms of NFL history, right? The Legion of Boom Seahawks defense and what that era of Seahawks football represented. Looking back on that now, what was maybe that kind of experience like? Like, did you get the feelings that this was the end, or was it already on the tea leaves, or just being there as it was all kind of all breaking apart? What was that experience like for you, just being a reporter around that team at the time?
Yeah, it was weird space to be in again because everyone was for a separate reason why it was weird. This time it was weird because everyone else who was there had already covered all of the Super Bowl runs and everything. You know, that like the person who's there at the Times now, Bob Condotta, the Seattle Times, that is their main paper there. He covered all that stuff. He was there for the Super Bowls. The Tacoma newspaper, they was there. ESPN guy, like everybody had already covered everything. They had built this rapport with the players, the coaches, the trainers, the assistants. You know, some of the guys shuffled out, but like I got in there, I just bloop, popped me in there. It's like, who's this kid? He don't know us, we don't know him. So it took some time, and then yeah, everything falls apart the year I show up. Michael Bennett gets his threatened to have his head blown off by the police in Vegas, and
Mm,
then they end up trading him. And Cliff Averill suffers a career-ending neck injury, and Cam Chancellor suffers a career-ending neck injury. Sherm blows his Achilles. Um, yeah, Earl had the "come get me" game that year where he walked in the Cowboys locker room and was like, "Yo, holla at me," which kind of started to fracture that relationship with the team. Like you said, then he broke his leg and he was out of here. So everything kind of just fell apart when I got there, which sucked because it was towards the end. It didn't feel like the end, but then that was also the same year that Seth Wickersham at ESPN dropped like this really in-depth article on basically why Sherm and the defense hate Russ. That was
mm,
like my
that's right.
second month on the job. So that was tough as well. It was like, man, why did everything get bad when I got here? And they fired Daryl Bevell, the OC. They fired Chris Richard, the DC, after that year. It was just a weird space to be in because I didn't have many sources. I wasn't super plugged in. I wasn't working for a reputable publication at the time. I was working at the Seattle PI. This is before the Athletic became a thing. So I already don't work. I don't got no juice. I don't got no juice based off my publication because if I came in there saying I was like New York Times or Seattle Times, I might have had some juice. ESPN, even Bleacher Report, shoot, had no juice. So that was very weird. Looking back on it, man, that sucked. I wish I still have some decent relationships with some of those guys. You know, Doug Baldwin, uh,
Hmm.
Cliff Averill, KJ Wright, Bobby, all these guys. They've all been on my pod before. Even like so that sucked. But
Yeah.
it was cool to kind of be there for the start of the new, because then I was able to kind of build some relationships with some of the guys who they brought in since then. That was kind of nice. But yeah, that looking back, man, that sucked. It sucked in real time because that was also the first time they had missed the playoffs since they drafted Russ. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
damn, y'all
right.
missed the playoffs when I get here too. Like, this is
It was all
really
bad.
awful. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just really, really awful. It's like I'm working on this big Seahawks project now, and it's required that I go look at some of the. I had to tell myself like, damn, I don't know anything about the good version of the Legion of Boom. Like I had to go back and watch some of those games and read some of those press clippings and watch some of those interviews again. I was like, man, these guys are really special. Like I rewatched every playoff game from 2013 to 2014. I'm like, wow, this was special. So I forgot them. I'm watching them at the bar in college or something like that. I didn't really sit down and watch them like I know ball
Mhm.
now. So yeah, I almost had to relive all that stuff. This is like a couple weeks ago. I actually did all this. It sucked to get there at the end because yeah, by the end it just really fell apart and everything like that stunk. But yeah, I'm glad that some of those guys are still here or still around at least. Like Doug, Cam's still here, Sherm's still here, even Luke Wilson's around. So KJ. So I'm glad that I built some relationships with some of those guys before they bounced. But yeah, man, it all fell apart when I got there. That stunk.
Mike, you mentioned having Pete Carroll on your podcast. I think what was it last year at this point, and you've been covering him now for what? This is year 7 or year 8 covering him. And we kind of know the persona that he has, but what is maybe something unique that you've learned about him just from being around him day to day, that you think people maybe don't understand uh, about him, or maybe like just something unique that is kind of key to understanding, like maybe what makes him tick and why he is the way he is.
Pete's really curious. I've learned that over the years around him, and it makes sense why so many people he touches so many different parts of the entertainment world. He always has visitors around there who aren't like that aren't tied to sports or even tied to the NFL. Like he's cool with like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and like even just today at practice he had some comedian, I don't know his name, Bert something. His shtick is like being shirtless. I think it's like off
Mm.
tops or something like that. It's some comedian. But he has people come through all the time. Kendrick Lamar came through. Drake came to practice. I think he had Michael Eric Dyson come to practice before or speak to the team. I can't remember on that one. Anyway, he's just a really curious guy. He reads a lot. He listens to stuff. He wanted to do my podcast. He
Yeah, then
asked
he
me.
he reached out to you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I saw him at the owners meeting. He was like, "Oh, when are we
That's
gonna do it?" I was like, "Today, if you want." What do you mean? When are we gonna do it? But he's a really curious cat. Like I say, he reads a lot. He wants to. He's. I think part of it is just naturally being curious, but the other part of it is he wants every edge there is, and he'll go wherever, whether that's talking to military people or coaches from other sports or musical acts or just anybody, people who, authors who write like self-help books or whatever it is,
Mhm.
scientists. Pete's just like, he's just curious about how things work. And if he can apply any of that stuff that someone's doing at a high level in their profession to his own or his own life, whatever it is. It's very, very fascinating that he's curious in that way. Like I've seen him apply externally with, like I said, talking to people who, are authors and musicians or whoever, but then even just he's, come up to me on the side of practice and ask me some stuff about my experiences. And I remember during like the George Floyd time, we had a long talk after practice one day, like 40 minutes or something like that. I think I held him up for like 2 meetings because he was just like, nah, we're having a good convo, So I think he did a podcast. Pretty sure he did a podcast interview with someone from TMZ, I think Van Lathan or something. But like he's a very curious guy beyond sports. I've never seen his office, but the way he has described it is like he's got one screen up that he's working on, but then he has several other screens that are sports. But sounds like one of them might be on like CNN or unfortunately might be on like Fox News or something. But the gist is he's curious. He's not full on like there's good people on both sides type. It doesn't seem, but he's just curious, which is cool because if I know he's doing that with me or whoever else, he's curious about his players, and it builds that genuine bond. Like he really will sit down and just be like, "All right, I want to learn about you as a dude. Yeah, I don't care if you can tackle, run, hit. We'll get to that. Who are you? Where are you from? You got any siblings? Like, you married? You have any kids? Like, let's talk. Like, oh wow, you're from this part. I've never been there. Let's talk. It's like he's very curious cat, and it informs who he is as a coach and as a dude. And some of that gets a little awkward. Like he had that Jordan Peterson guy show up to practice one day. You guys can just Google Jordan Peterson and you'll see why that was a little bit of problematic appearance. But generally speaking, of all the things with Pete, that has probably stood out the most. That he is genuinely curious at 72 years old to still learn, not just about the world, but about the people in their fields. And it ain't just the him being cool with Steve Kerr because he's won a bunch of championships with the Warriors. It's like, no, he's curious about just a local journalist where I'm from, how I got into this, all these other things. Like that's really cool. He's got like this hunkering to learn more about everything. I think that's probably quietly what makes him also a good players coach too. Because when you're inquisitive like that, you can't help but be empathetic too.
Yeah.
Like if you get to know someone, you're not probably you are certainly more likely to care about them if you know where they come from, you know their background. Um, so yeah, I think that of all the things, Pete's got a lot of things cool about him. He's got a lot of things weird about him, funky, unique. That one, his inquisitiveness, is what has stood out to me.
Just want to ask you a few more questions, Mike, and then I'll kind of get you out of here. For kind of young Black folks looking to kind of do what you do, right? To break into sports media, like sports journalism, or I mean, there's so many different what's the word, like aspects, right, of sports media, and it's all kind of like merging
Mm-hmm.
in many ways, just because of the age we live in, and technology, and the endless content. But I guess what advice would you give to like young Black folk about like really breaking in to this industry, but also standing out when there is so much? We both know there's so much junk out there. Like, what does
Mm-hmm.
it take to not only break in, but also to kind of stand out?
I think to be yourself, that's one. Be yourself. Learn how to write and learn how to write a story. But even if you're not going to be a writer, learning how to write a story just has so many good qualities. Because if you're going to be in the content game, the way you even become good at writing is just good tools that you'll be able to apply, like research. Like if you're going to be, if say you're going to have a podcast, how you structure a good story. Like if you were going to write about your subject, what research would you do? Okay, you use that to inform the questions that you ask, and then you end up having a good show. Like
Mhm.
it all works together in that way. Like the art of storytelling it's relevant in every platform. And if you can combine that with authenticity and empathy, you'll be fire no matter what kind of platform you choose to tell those stories, whether it's podcast, radio, you get on TV or whatever. If you do print, it just works. You'll probably have to end up doing all of those things, but it really works. I think the other part is to acknowledge, if you're going to be sports specific, or even if you're not, acknowledge what you don't know and try to fill out your blind spots. That's been a really good way that I've connected with coaches in particular, is like going up to them and being like, hey coach, I'm really trying to learn the specifics of cover 4 and cover 6 versus cover 2. It's tripping me up a little bit. Can you help me? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Like where you at? I'm like, all right, well, this is what I got. This is what I'm confused about. And boom. Next thing you know, we're having a 30-minute convo outside the locker room about cover 6. And then they can appreciate that you're trying,
Mhm.
because like you said, there's a lot of junk, and it's a lot of junk with people being wrong. Like players have a real hard beef with PFF, like and if you can try to understand where they're coming from, like that's huge. Like I've had players tell me that directly. They'll be like, "Yo, you try, even if you're wrong, you at least ask like, hey, I don't know what happened on that play. Can you ask me what coverage was that?" Instead of assuming like, "Oh yeah, this guy stinks. He blew that. Look at this. His PFF grade is low. He must stink." It's like acknowledging what you don't know, trying to search for the answers, and then going from there. That's in any sport, because every sport has nuances. That's important, and whether you're an analytics person or a film person or whatever. So I think all of that can apply to whatever field you're trying to go into, media or like print, video, radio, audio, whatever. Be yourself, learn how to write, learn how to tell a story, and acknowledge that you don't know everything. And I think you'll be fine no matter what you choose.
It's good advice. And quick hitters, Mike, to kind of wrap up. Um, I think these first couple will be fun. Who's the best, in your opinion? Who's the best athlete to ever come out of Seattle?
Ooh, man, this sucks as a question because the answer looks so crazy right now. But I really do think it is Nate Robinson. He is just clearly
Ah,
not the best boxer to come out of Seattle, but he
yeah,
is such a good athlete, dog. Like he really is. Like Nate was at the University of Washington to play football, and it's like he was also so nice he could go to the NBA. Like I really don't think it's like right now, a dude at Colorado, people are marveling over him being able to play both ways. His name
Travis
is
Hunter.
escaping me. Travis Hunter. Yes, he can play two positions in the same sport, and it's like, wow, he's incredible. Nate was able to play two different sports. Like Nate could have made the NFL as a corner. I don't know how good he would have been, but he would have made it. Like he might have been a special teams practice squad guy, whatever, which is still crazy because he could also be good enough to play however long he played in the NBA.
Yeah.
Like that's a special talent. Now I don't think he's the only guy that could have done that, but like I know he could have done both. Like I'm only 31, so like my Seattle sports knowledge is not like the deepest of the deep. Like Jamal Crawford would probably have a better answer than me, or even like Slick Watts or somebody would probably have, or Donald Watts, his son would probably have a better answer of like knowing. But for my money, man, pound for pound, I'm taking Nate Robb, man. That's a special athlete. He just can't box. That's it, which is no shade on him.
Yeah.
That's maybe just not his bag, but he can do everything. I'm pretty sure if Nate could probably play soccer, frisbee, whatever, baseball, but just boxing clearly was just not it. But yeah, man, it's Nate for me.
Yeah, Nate. I'm pretty sure he went to state in track. I'm like 80% sure he went to state at beach and track. And then also one more quick thing on Nate. I watched him win a 3-point contest against like D1 and overseas guys shooting left-handed in a 3-point contest. Like that's just how generational he is. So that's a really good answer. You're the best Seahawk ever, in your opinion.
Ooh, this is a fun one. I think that it's Bobby Wagner. I think so. I really do. Like, and it's gonna. He's the test of time, man. Like Bobby's in year 12 playing like. I don't think he'll be all pro this year because he doesn't get the ball in his hands enough. But man, you just watch the tape. Bobby's playing at a super duper high level, man, and he is just, like he's got the raw accolades are fun. He's got the all pros, the Pro Bowls. I think he's been all pro like either first or second team like 9 times. Brazilian Pro Bowls. Like was in an elite defense where he was an elite part. He wasn't just along for the ride. As a middle linebacker, he's just. I think it's Bobby. I think some other guys have some better peaks, like peak Earl Thomas and peak Walter Jones are probably better. Like Earl is really good. And Big Walt like has an argument to be the best ever at his position, like an argument. It's not clear cut. Like Bobby has an argument, but then Ray Lewis exists, so it's just like right after that. But like Bobby's up there, I think, with all of the other non-Ray Lewis linebackers in NFL history. Like, I think so. So yeah, I think it's Bobby, man. And I think when we get overtime, we're going to realize that that's the actual answer. I know there's a lot of, as a 31-year-old, I'm closer to this generation, but like I literally here, I can even show you for the visual part of this. This is the NFL 100 football book written by everyone at The Athletic. We all had to do entries for like everyone who was voted the top 100 player. And if you had a player on the team you cover, you had to do the entry. I think the 2 Seahawks made it, Steve Largent and Walter Jones. I did the Walter Jones one. Someone else did the Steve Largent one. When I was researching the Walter Jones joint, I watched a lot of Walt tape, a lot of his accolades, read a lot of articles about him. I was like, yo, it's him and Bobby. Like, I feel like a lot of Seahawks fans think that like there's this huge gap. Nah, man, it's one of those two. And I don't even think it's much of a discussion, really. I think when you talk about peaks, then it's a discussion. Because then you got Cortez, who won Defensive Player of the Year on a team that lost 14 games, which is insane at defensive tackle. Yeah. But if you're talking peaks, that can be anybody. But that can be like 5 different guys. If you're talking about just who's the best and who's done it for as long as they did, go ahead, give me B-Wags. If you're a big Walt guy, I'm cool with that too. But for my money, give me B-Wags.
I'm not mad at that. That's a good choice. All right, your favorite NFL city?
It's a tie. I'm a big fan of Detroit, and I'm a big fan of Atlanta. Okay. For largely the same reasons, food and the black people. Those are 2 really black cities. I know Detroit gets a bad rap because it's cold in Detroit, but like if you're a black person looking for something to do and be around other black people in Detroit, you will have a good time. Like I've had a good time every time I've been in Detroit, going to like lounges, food, just bars, clubs. Like I've had a great time with like everywhere from going to like this is a nightclub, fancy spot to just like oh this is a sports bar in town. Like I've always enjoyed my time in Detroit. I've been in Detroit quite a bit now. It feels like, and then Atlanta, same reason. I'm a big strip club guy. I love the strip clubs in Atlanta. Love the club scene in Atlanta. I'm not like a smoke hookah, drink tequila type. I don't do either of those things actually, but yeah, I'll go turn up at the club in Atlanta. Like I might do my bachelor party in Atlanta. We'll see. I'm still working on that. But yeah, those are like two of my favorite cities, and I think I just like being around Black people so much. And I pretty much have been to almost every NFL city. I just haven't done Nashville, Tampa, Jacksonville, Foxborough. I think that in Kansas City. I don't know if I said that. So yeah, I've been to most of them, and so yeah, my favorites are Detroit and Atlanta, and also neither one of them is like super expensive either. Like whereas you go to Miami, you spending some bread if you want to kick it in Miami. You don't got to spend that type of bread in Detroit or Atlanta.
Facts. That's a good one. Okay, so now your favorite NFL stadium press box experience.
I think the best stadiums are the two newest ones, SoFi and the Raiders one, Allegiant. Man, Dallas is dope. Dallas feels like an experience. SoFi does too, but Dallas does. You walk into Dallas stadium, you like, oh my god! Like even the tailgates are crazy. In Dallas, like I think I'm gonna end up like hosting a pregame party like the Wednesday before they play the Cowboys this year. That's how crazy Dallas is. We'll see. I don't want to do it for free, so but if they can't pay me, at least got to give me unlimited tab or something like that. I run that joint up, free food and drink on y'all. But like Dallas is crazy. When they played the Seahawks in 2018 in the playoffs, like I walked through the tailgates there. I was like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. Not like jumping through tables in Buffalo crazy, but just like it felt like everybody in the world was there. And like in terms of diversity, because Cowboys got like a big Hispanic fan base, Black people will kill you over the Cowboys, and then you got white people that kill you over the Cowboys. Like they gotta have the most diverse fan base in the world. Like Cowboys fandom, and then the environment matches it too. Like the tailgates were crazy, and then inside the stadium it was like Jerry World is real deal. So that's probably I've only been to that one time, but that was pretty lit. In terms of also experience, Minnesota is pretty cool too, because Minnesota they spent a lot of money on their stadium being noisy, and they use all of it every time. Kirk Cousins throws the ball for a first down. Boom, 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 boom. Go Vikings. Bullhorn or whatever that little Viking horn is called. Like that's crazy. They had it snow in there one time that I was in there. Like fake snow came down from the ceiling. I was like, yo, this is crazy. Y'all little pyrotechnic department is lit. So yeah, those two are probably the best for me. I guess I haven't been to all of them, but yeah, those right now those are probably the top.
Okay. Now, what's been your worst NFL stadium press box experience?
I don't see there needing to be a team in Green Bay. I really think if we like did that over, like if like we started over and every team had to like submit a bid to the NFL to like get a team there, I really think Green Bay would get denied fast. They would just put it in Milwaukee, like it wouldn't dump Wisconsin altogether. But for sure, there's no way in hell if every team had to submit like, hey, here's what our airport size, hotel, economy, stadium quality, weather, and submit it to the NFL, get approved, you get the stadium in your city. There's no way in hell Green Bay would get one. There's just no point. Why is it not in Milwaukee? I just don't understand. Well, I do understand because when it was started, but still, yeah, there's just no point. It's not even that there's nothing to do there. It's just like we're in Green. It's hard to get to. Like, I think being able to get to your city is a big part. Like I said, airport size. Can we stay there? Can people party there? Like, can we get out of there easily on a big game weekend? No, you can't. I got stuck behind a snowplow driving from Green Bay to Milwaukee in the middle of the night trying to catch a flight in 2019. Awful experience. Snowplow was only 20 miles an hour. It took us like 2 hours to make an hour-long trip. Had to drive through Minnesota, and people were on snowmobiles trying to get to the playoff game in 2019. It was just awful. So yeah, I just don't think there should be I've been to Green Bay a few times now, and I just don't think there should be an NFL team there. Just put it in Milwaukee. Like it's just I see no purpose. I haven't been to Buffalo, so I don't feel as strongly about that. But I feel like they might have a problem too if we did the the reorder of teams getting cities, I think like Texas would probably get a third team before Buffalo gets one, like a team in Austin or something. I feel like would
Yeah.
probably win a bid ahead of Buffalo. Again, I haven't been there, so but still, I feel like I'm right on that one.
Yeah, I think it's like the rabid like fan bases. Like it's just crazy in like in a Green Bay and a Buffalo, even though you don't want to go there. Like I've been to Buffalo and the fan base is insane. And so I think just the NFL support there is kind of what holds it, because every other reason you don't really want to go there.
Yeah,
Uh
like why? Why are we in Buffalo? I
yeah.
know you think Jackson. You say Jacksonville's not as bad as like people think. I haven't been there, but I've heard nothing good. But except for you, you're the only person I've heard speak anything
Not
positive of
see.
Jacksonville.
Yeah, nah, it's Jacksonville isn't great, but you have to like stay like at Jacksonville Beach. You have to, like, if you're willing to drive, like to stay at the hotel, like on the beach, then it's good. But if you're staying in Jacksonville proper, nah. It's just, yeah, it's not it.
I think they would probably have a problem getting a bid too. I think other teams would get
Yeah, no, they
bids
would definitely
over
have a
them.
problem for sure. Um, yeah, as our friend DJ BNMA likes to call it, it's an abomination of a city. So so it's definitely I can't really disagree. Okay,
Yeah, I think
all
I
right.
think I think if they had to reorder it, I could see Salt Lake and Salt Lake, St. Louis, and Austin taking the place of some current cities in
Yeah,
terms of NFL stadiums. Yeah, that would be my guess on some of the. Maybe I'm missing one, but those three stand out as like, yeah, these teams, these cities probably are better equipped to have an NFL team.
for sure. All right, last two. Uh, the best piece of advice you've ever gotten.
That's a good question. That's a good question. That's been told to me directly. There's 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 not a ton. Um, I got some good advice coming out of college from a guy named Kyle. What's Kyle's last name? Kyle Bonagura, I think is his last name. Works at ESPN now. I remember I DM'd him like, "Yo, about to graduate from Wazoo. You're a Wazoo grad. You work at ESPN. How can I get where you're at?" And he was like, "Be prepared to take shit jobs for not a lot of money and work
Mm,
hard." I'm like, "Damn, that sucked." He was right. But, whew, that was tough. That was probably the best direct advice that I got. That's like broadly applicable. Uh, but I think the best that I've just like heard that's either said directly or like said to me at like a seminar that I'm at or something like that is to be yourself. Like that. It's so simple, but uh, it's so important, and because at this point in the media game in particular, but this applies pretty much everywhere in the media game, who you are is what people are going to be drawn to.
yeah.
Like, yeah, you may work at an outlet or a publication or be around cover this team or something or have a podcast on this network, but ultimately people are just going to follow you if they like you. Whether you host a podcast on Spotify or you jump to Bleacher Report or Meadowlark Media or Front Office Sports or Yahoo, like you just bounce around, you're on Fox, you're on TNT, you're on ESPN, like whatever. People at this point are following you. Be you, and people will rock or they won't rock. But the thing is, you won't have to chase the people that don't. It's almost like being an underground artist. Like if you got your fans and your shows sell out when you do your tours and people buy your merch and like your music, you don't ever gotta do no collaboration with Katy Perry. Just make your music, so you don't gotta go over there if you don't want to. Just be you, be your authentic self. That doesn't mean don't grow, but like, you know how it is in music. People like feel like they gotta pop and they call Flow Rider or something like that, or they gotta do this like dubstep Euro record, and it's like, nah, man, just be you, make your music, And the media is the same way. Just be you,
Yeah.
and for better or worse, that'll get you where you want to be. So yeah, I keep that in mind all the
Yeah.
time as I do my podcast, and I've had to, like I said, I've done the radio show thing, and I've only really been at the Athletics, so I ain't had to bounce. But I'm sure if I bounce, people are going to read me wherever I go.
Mhm.
I don't plan on bouncing, but yeah, you get the gist. So yeah, be yourself has been the best life and career advice I could ever heed.
Yeah, and you literally live that. Like that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, Mike, where can want to not only follow your Seahawks content, but kind of again on that theme of who you are as a person. If they want to get to know more about who you are, where should people follow you at?
Just follow me on X or Twitter or whatever. Follow me on there at Mike Dugar. All of my stuff is pinned to the top of my profile page, or like the link is in my my author bio is in my Twitter bio or whatever. So if you click on that, you get everything I write at The Athletic. I always have the latest Seahawks Man to Man podcast pinned to the top of my profile. So, and if I ever get back into radio, I'm always going to have that link in there too, whether via Linktree or whatever. So everything, everywhere you want to find me is in there on X, Twitter, whatever the hell Elon's doing over there to that. Just follow me on there. You'll get all the content. Yeah, that's I've designed that to be a one-stop shop, so people ain't gotta bounce around. Because I know people are looking for me, and I'm not verified no more. But trust me, it's me.
It's you.
The Mike Dugar one is me. There's no fake pages of me yet, thank God.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one's me.
Yeah, just look for the Dugar Michael-Shawn, and you're straight. Well, Mike, appreciate you coming on, man. Keep doing your thing. You know how much you've kind of done for me, just in terms of my career, like early on covering the NFL. Like, got a lot of love for you, respect for you. Keep doing your thing, and yeah, everyone, this has been another episode of the Raw Facts podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Appreciate all of you for continuing to rock with me. Appreciate the support. Until next week, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.